Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/AskReddit. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Teachers of Reddit, what is the funniest roast you ever did during a class? The other day another teacher came into our class who has a bald head, and he just got it waxed or something, and my mate says fresh polish sir, and the teacher fires back with anything for your mother mate. Class went ape shit. Savage. Teacher, my mother please sit down, the lesson has started. Student, you can't tell me that, I'm not a dog. Teacher, I know you're not a dog, because a dog is able to do that simple command. She is still proud about that one and tells it at family gatherings. And that's when I said, because a dog is able to do that simple command. Jill, would you please pass the mashed potatoes? My maths teacher in secondary school stuck my middle finger up at her only one finger for a woman my age. My 15-year-old self was mortified. You won that battle, Ms. Walcott. Love it. Thank you OP and Ms. Walcott. OHHHH shite. Amazing. Probably not that funny since it's not much of a roast, and since I don't memorize them all, but the first situation that came to mind was this. We were learning how to name hydrocarbons/alkanes. I walk into the class as the lesson starts, and see a guy drawing a swastika on the board. A swastika can be interpreted as a structure of an alkane, so instead of getting angry and telling him to erase it, I said something along the lines of so you're eager to practice naming compounds, great. Well, go ahead then. The guy obviously didn't know how, so after him getting pretty embarrassed and sitting down, I wrote the compound name, 3,3-diethylpentane, on the board as if nothing special, and half the class was like WTF, the other giggling. I like deadpan humor. Deadpan humor is actually the best. I'm not a teacher, but I remember when I was 13 we had a really laid-back, jokey science teacher. When one of my mates asked if he could go to the toilet, my teacher let him, but just as he was about to get to the door the teacher shouted that he'd forgotten something. My mate turned around to see my teacher holding a magnifying glass and a pair of tweezers. Damn, that's savage. I'm a laid-back chem teacher, but even for me that's too far lol. A boy was murdered that day, sir. Maybe not funny to share, but it was a hit in class. My know-it-all student, who is a fantastic and thoughtful kid, but gets agitated if I don't call on him, was shaking his hand wildly and making ooh noises, mature high school student, but trying to paint a picture here, to answer a question about financial statements. After no one else would volunteer I looked at him and said, are you sure you want to answer this? It's pretty tricky, and if you get it wrong you are expelled. He says proudly that he is very confident. I reply, confidence is quiet, you are not. Class went nuts. We all get along very well, so it was a fun day. Another time I had shaved my head to support a student going through chemo. A smart art student asked why I went bald, so I replied that my wife had a coupon for a 2-for-1 Brazilian, so I said what the hell. That kid became a super student after that since he immediately found me to be his hero lol. I thrive in the zone of going to the line and maybe just a tiny toe over inappropriateness. This year I cannot do that because I teach online, so I am literally in people's homes. Gotta be careful. Mr. Barbaric Beast, you know what you look like? Your next stepfather? He stopped trying to roast after that one. In The Student and the Teacher was famous for his jokes. Me, excuse me sir, we are pretty stressed out, can you tell a joke? Teacher, isn't it enough of a joke that you are here? I cried in the break. Learned a lesson to not be a dick though. I work in a primary school as a CA, and sometimes when the kids are being a pain at lunchtime we play dummies, meeting basically who can be quite the longest. One of the kids, who has a bit of an attitude at times, asked why it's called dummy meeting. I explained that it was an outdated term for people who couldn't speak, and that we should probably change the name. His response, that's ridiculous, I'm dumb and I can speak fine, and without thinking I reply no, insert name, you're stupid, you're not dumb. Thank God he's a child with a thick skin on him. I felt terrible for a second, until he burst out laughing. Ever since the game has been called hit the mute button instead. Had a student in 7th grade who would draw dick pics over everything. The books in the school, the desk in certain classes, on the whiteboards, windows, etc. So we dropped 4 heavy and hardcover books on his desk about the human anatomy. He had to carry these books around all day, and they had awful titles that he would get picked at for. That and the science teacher going, "You obviously can draw a penis, but now you need to know how it works." No more drawings after that. This is excellent. My wife always tells me I'm pretty fortunate I've never been fired. I say most of these things without even thinking. Favorite 3 off the top of my head. During a lecture, a student asks if I was planning on sending the class to the health fair, which was a mostly waste of time. Why do you need to go to that? I need to learn about STDs. Don't worry, you can't catch anything from your hand. My favorite restaurant is Olive Garden. Oh yeah, why's that? I love the all-you-can-eat breadsticks. Oh yeah? I give your mom a similar deal. I always have some question at the beginning of each test like, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why? This question was, what would your dream job be? Class of 30 all quietly taking their tests when a kid in the back looks up and says, "Mister, know what my job would be?" Without skipping a beat and barely looking up, I responded with, "I dunno, a fluffer?" Thank God he was the only one who knew what that was and responded by cracking up. Anyway, still have my job and say things like that less frequently. Me, after being met for the umpteenth time with blank stares after asking what we did last lesson. Sometimes it feels like 8th graders' heads work just like toilets. You fill up throughout the day, and when the school bell rings you flush. I was pretty proud of myself. Surely you weren't an English teacher. Kinda true though. I'm amazed by the amount of your mom jokes here. IDK if it's a German thing, but in my school nobody would even have imagined doing your mom jokes towards teachers, let alone teachers doing them. Even the funnier/more relaxed teachers would never have done that, LMAO. Not just a German thing. Half of these comments could get a teacher fired. It's disturbing that an adult in authority would speak to children/teens in that way. I am a similarly surprised American, and maybe it's age, I'm almost 40. Early on in my career, I had a girl ask to go to the bathroom. She was gone for over 25 minutes. Came back when the bell rang. I spoke to her after the lesson, was worried perhaps there had been an issue, although kids told me she did this every lesson. With a wicked smile, she told me she was on her period, and that's why it took so long. Now clearly this excuse had worked prior, as it embarrassed some poor older male teacher into letting her off with it. As a young female teacher, the effect was completely lost. I replied, unless you're away knitting a tampon, I can tell you from experience that it certainly doesn't take 25 minutes. She was absolutely mortified and never tried it again. The vice principal at the high school I work at was amazing. He was a teacher for about 25 years before becoming an administrator. Very old school, sarcastic, tough guy. All the kids loved him as much as they feared him. One day at lunch, he saw a student with a ton of hickeys on his neck. Asked the student if he needed an ambulance called, since he clearly had an internal bleeding issue. All the kids laughed and the kid next to him said, "Can you call me an ambulance?" VP didn't even skip a beat, "You're an ambulance." A colleague of mine will listen to the young men in his class talk about how tough they are, threaten to fight each other, etc., and then play the Mr. Softy ice cream truck music from his computer. It never fails that the entire class starts dying laughing. A very bright college student of mine said, "This may be a stupid question, but..." I interrupted him and said, "There are no stupid questions. There are just stupid students. Now go ahead and ask." Not a teacher, but... I was about to post my "not a teacher, but" and then saw this and stopped, LMAO. The title and at least half the comments here are copied from an older question, come on people. Our class was acting out and our teacher went, "God, your generation has so many problems." I replied with, "Didn't your generation raise our generation?" Class went nuts and he stood there thinking about what just transpired. Not a teacher, but I remembered this one, as there were a lot. I was in the 7th grade and had a teacher who had been to Japan as a tourist, knowing about the culture. It was one of the few ways to understand different countries in the 1990s and early 2000s. It was common for at least one kid to poke fun of the few Asian students. The teacher challenged him to say something in Japanese if he's such a smartass. I know little Japanese despite anime being popular in the hood. There were a few non-anime cartoons I knew had someone spoke Japanese, like Doug. The few other Asian languages I knew more about was Korean and Vietnamese. Still, the kid took up the challenge, like a dumbass, and said something that seems gibberish. A moment of pause filled in the air, until the teacher simply said, "That's Chinese." That shut the kid up, with the teacher just moving on with her lesson as if nothing happened. Happened just 2 months ago, online. Me, sir, I have a question. Teacher, don't ask. That's not a roast, it's just being mean. Kid roasts other kid while playing Kahoot, something about how even though he's getting them all right, he's taking the max amount of time you can. Anyways, after he said it, the teacher said, "Nice one, Jacob. Today is X's birthday because he's a joke." It was April Fool's Day. They all knew I was just messing around and they loved it. I'm not a teacher, but this happened in my class a little while ago. So me and some of my friends were messing with our other friend, calling him short and making short jokes and stuff. It went on for about 10 minutes, then our teacher said you need to raise your expectations for your friends. While she said it, she gestured her hand up. So my entire class just burst out laughing because my teacher is a really nice person, and the last thing we expected her to do was to make a short joke. She didn't mean to call him short, and after she realized what she said, she apologized, and saying she didn't think about what she said until we started laughing. It was probably one of the funniest things that have happened in my class. Kid, you're fat. Me, shut yo king-sized Reese's bar s up. Roses are red. Violets are blue. Whoever threw that paper. Your mom's a hoe. Had a kid who was the backup QB for the football team. He was smart and usually very respectful, but he could be just a bit of an ass sometimes. I was trying to get him to go back to his seat to work on something, and he had complained saying he needed to stand and didn't want to sit down. I told he'd get to stand around on the sidelines plenty at the game tonight. He was a good sport about it, and we both had a laugh out of it. He got to work in his desk afterwards though. A few of my students were taking a BuzzFeed quiz or something similar to find out which Spice Girl they were. As I was eavesdropping on their fun, a classmate wandered up and asked, "Which Spice Girl am I?" I looked at her, from her fur-lined Uggs up to her North Face fleece vest, and gave her the answer, "Pumpkin Spice." Not sure how funny it actually was, but the class lost it. I, of course, no-sold it to make myself seem cooler. I have a bunch of middle school boys in my trivia bowl. Of course, middle school boys like to make sex jokes each second the world allows. Being a younger female teacher, it gets uncomfortable. One day in our trivia group, I got so annoyed with the immaturity. I know, what do I expect would happen? I called out the trivia question for them and set a timer for 10 seconds to answer the question. Our trivia question was, name 5 islands, and one of the students, who tries to be funny, tries to make his friends laugh, kept yelling the answer: Hawaii, Cabo, Virgin Islands, Virgin Islands, Virgin Islands, Virgin Islands. I calmly paused and asked, is that where you're from? Of course they thought that was the best roast they ever heard. The room erupted with laughter and oohs. He did shut up though. Now that I look back, I kinda thought that was a bit out of line for me to say because kids will be kids. Oh well. Art teacher. Before I arrived in class, someone drew a pair of boobs on the board. I knew exactly who it was, but I asked anyways. The class all looked at the kid. He knew he was caught and with a red face, confessed. I then invited him up to the front of the class and asked him to tell us a bit about his work. What were his motivations, inspirations, and overall message? Is the anatomy correct? Why or why not? We then spent 10 minutes doing a full-on critique of this kid's boob drawing. I do not roast my students. Lamb with mashed potatoes. I can't really tell you one of them, but my biology teacher is the roast master of our entire school. Good thing I never got roasted. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.